In this episode of the Beamable Game Dev Podcast, we're mixing things up a bit. You're going to hear the audio version of a live webinar that we did with AWS. Now, I do recommend watching this on YouTube so that you can see the whole presentation. Let's jump into this. Welcome, everybody, to the Beamable AWS webinar. During today's session, we will discuss some trends and challenges in live game development. We'll demonstrate how Beamable and Amazon can cost-effectively accelerate development of your game and ease ongoing game management. Included in this session will be a real-time demonstration of Beamable's tools for AWS. We invite you all to participate in this session by dropping your questions into the chat. If preferred, will be designated. There will be a designated Q&A time towards the end of this session. My name is Josh Schmidt. I am a content producer and work with the marketing team at Beamable. I'm going to introduce our panel here, starting with Chris Hanna.
Everyone, my name's Chris, the lead Unity engineer here at Beamable. Been with the company for a little while, and lifelong game dev. Love making games anywhere I can. So happy to be here and talk to you all about AWS and Beamable.
Next up, we have Trapper Markells.
Yeah, great. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thanks to Amazon for being on this panel. I'm Trapper Markells. I'm the COO at Beamable, one of the co-founders of the company. I've spent a number of years building online game communities and game networks. Also have served as game director on mobile titles. So I know sort of the game industry and the challenges that game makers face, and really excited to share with you all about Beamable today.
We also have Kevin Ashman.
Hi there, thanks for having me. I'm Kevin Ashman. I'm a partner solutions architect with AWS Game Tech. Been working at AWS in the games industry for over 7 years. Before that, I was at Unity, really focused on bringing these type of solutions to game developers out there, and excited to show what can be done with Beamable.
And we also have Eugene Mu.
Hey everyone, my name is Eugene. I'm also a partner solutions architect at AWS, working with Kevin in the game tech space. Been with Amazon for the past couple of years, but yeah, really excited to kind of join and talk to you all about kind of the AWS Beamable combination.
Trapper, we're going to let you kick this off by letting us know who is Beamable.
Yeah, so Beamable is an online game platform that helps you rapidly add social, commerce, content management systems, analytics, and game operations to your projects. We do that through some deep Unity integration, and we really got our start as a game studio. We were building, AAA mobile IP-based titles and heavily content-driven, and we found ourselves solving the same problems over and over again. And so we started to invest in a platform to solve those problems across multiple games and multiple teams, and sort of take advantage of some of the best practices in sort of economy design and inventory and social features, and then started to put that into a reusable platform. Eventually found that we'd like to bring that out and offer that up to more game developers. I mean, fundamentally, at Beamable, we believe that game making is still way too hard. It takes too long to make the same things over and over again. And so we're envisioning a future where you can rapidly add these capabilities, so you can spend way more time working on the things that are going to differentiate your player experience, and not have to rebuild infrastructure kind of constantly. So that's why we created Beamable. I mean, one of the main differentiators of Beamable is really our investment in developer workflow. As game developers ourselves, we have a really strong sense of sort of how you work within Engine, how you work through the problem-solving process. And so Beamable is really tightly integrated with Unity. It's really tightly integrated with C#. And the goal is really to allow you to write both client and server code side by side, step through it, and take full advantage of everything that a game server can provide without having to build a game server yourself. And that's kind of the mission that we're on.
Kevin, we're going to go to you next. How has AWS Game Tech seen trends change with gaming in the last couple of years?
Great, thanks. It lines up with a lot of what Trapper just said in terms of game developers shouldn't be writing the same things over and over again, right? And in the last few years, even 10 years, a lot of these things that are now features inside of Beamable are things that developers had to write over and over again, especially new developers. AWS has always been focused in general on startups and helped accelerate many different companies. Same is true in the games industry. And so Trapper said, developers should focus on what differentiates their game. AWS tries to handle the what we call undifferentiated heavy lifting, meaning the things that every game needs that takes a lot of work that you shouldn't have to bother yourself with. That's why there's an alignment with Beamable. And in general, the industry has had to ramp up because if you think about it, games used to be on a disk, shipped, and the dev team partied, had a celebration. They thought they were done, right? And they were back then. Any bugs that were in the games were features. We all had fun with them, but that's not true at all. As soon as games could be patched or even downloadable content, DLCs, that dev team had to have a plan post launch. And now, especially with the features that Beamable offers, games are live. They're living, right? They need the ability to rapidly change based on players and community feedback. And they need to do that not just in the kind of the game loop that's built into the editor like in Unity, but also externally with all of the services like in-game mail, push notifications. That experience, right, is now outside of just what developers build inside of the game engine. So building on AWS gives, and with Beamable gives studios a chance to experiment, innovate, and maybe even make mistakes, but allow them to change that quickly, test, analyze, and predict, and act on player feedback. That's what AWS Game Tech is focused on delivering, as solutions like Beamable focus in on specific things that every developer needs, like tournaments and live events, push notifications, news and announcements, all these things that increase the overall lifetime value of players. So again, the Unity integration brings that right into the development experience and expands the concept of game development outside of where the industry has been going into these, live experiences, places, right? People go to these places, not just single player game experiences. They want to see leaderboards. They want to see these services. And Beamable fits because it brings it right into the Unity editor with prefabs and such. So the industry has shifted to live services, and let's not burden the developers, with the undifferentiated heavy lifting, which is where that all lines up.
Yeah, those are great points, Kevin. I mean, ultimately, these trends are leading to a massive increase in the need for tooling, right? So it's not just having the raw resources available, having the servers, having the databases, having PubSub, having messaging, having all of these technologies, right? It's really about everything that you need to not just build that, but also operate that, to build content, to promote content, to provide these features, to customer support them, to get player data. And these are all tools that large AAA studios, they have. I mean, if you have the money to build large games, you also have the money to build large game infrastructure, to attract the talent, to manage that large game infrastructure. But if you're a smaller studio, right, you still might have a great budget, right? But you don't want to have to compete for all that talent. You don't want to have to compete for all that expertise. So really what Beamable is doing is layering all of this tooling over the top of all this AWS infrastructure. And this tooling is hyper specialized for the kinds of problems that game developers want to solve. And so we wake up every day figuring out, how do we build the tooling on top of this AWS infrastructure so that you can rapidly solve your problems? You can rapidly implement the kind of features that are really going to matter.
Right. And another way to think of that is the games industry is a hit-driven industry. You mentioned the larger studios can focus on that, but we have seen so much great success from games from smaller studios, and even games that have been out for a while. They get hit, a couple years later. We've even seen, right, where games spike in the charts. And what developers should be able to do is build the experience that they want to build in a way that can scale when that success happens. Every developer should know that they can be that successful and that their systems underneath won't break when that happens. But don't burden that creative environment with all of those additional undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? That basically gets in the way of game development and that experience that they're building, not to mention iterating on it as quickly as possible. So we want to make sure that AWS GameTech customers are building their games and their services in such a way that they're planning for that success, and aren't going to hit a bump just exactly at that moment where they least need it. If their game goes viral, if it gets the attention it deserves, that's when you can't fall over on your live services.
Chris, we're going to send it over to you. Why should game developers care about Beamable?
Yeah, I think people are already kind of answering this. Beamable is a time saver. I think Trapper had mentioned earlier, like, sure, a studio can go out and attract talent and assemble a team of people who are great server engineers and can put together the kind of functionality that Beamable offers out of the box. But, like, why bother? We've solved that problem, and we've bundled it and made it pretty accessible. So you can just pull these tools right into Unity and get going in a matter of minutes instead of, I mean, gosh, I don't even want to think like how long it could take to spin up a whole team and start understanding all of the stuff that you'd have to do in order to get those features that Trapper was mentioning, like messaging or leaderboards or whatever else. To go a little bit more into that, even like, if you didn't have Beamable and you wanted to build a modern live ops driven game, and you want the social features that people kind of expect, players expect, like leaderboards and chat, friends and account management, and there's a whole laundry list of things. If you wanted to build that on your own, you need to kind of think critically about what it's going to take to do all that. And I don't want to scare anyone, I guess, but like, first, you're going to need to learn some sort of server tech language or framework. Maybe you use ASP.NET or use Ruby on Rails, you use Node, whatever you want, but you now need to gain expertise in that field, and you need to figure out how you're going to assemble all that code, and you got to then figure out all of the headaches around package management and serializing your data between your game and your server, and like keeping those things in sync with each other. And even once you're like developing locally, that's great. But like Kevin was saying, when it comes time to launch, you want to make sure that you're positioned in a way where you can take off. As soon as your players arrive, you want to be able to scale out your infrastructure. And so now you, as a game studio, are going to need a bunch of experience in how does that stuff work. So there's so many areas of expertise and a lot of domain knowledge that, like, it's not impossible. You can do it. But I would ask, if you can pull something off the shelf that does it for you, you're leveraging whole teams of people, us at Beamable, folks at Amazon. Like, I think that's why people should care about us. We're offering something, I think, pretty valuable.
I'm going to look at the chat real quick from Kyle. It says, oh, yeah, spend more time on learning tools, SDKs, languages, SASS, etc., and never get time to make the game. So, Chris, what makes Beamable and AWS the perfect pair?
I think at Beamable, we've built a lot of our stuff, all of our stuff, frankly, on top of AWS. So all of the stuff that you get, like leaderboards, that all exists inside of AWS's ecosystem of services. And later we'll get to a demo where we actually build something using our C# microservices feature. And that microservice that we're going to build using Beamable actually will then go and sit inside of the Amazon cloud, and it can then interact with other services there. So I think they're the perfect pair, just that they're situated inside of each other. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, so I think I'll add a little bit onto that. So I think working with you, Chris, and Trapper, and Ali, who's not here today, but working on kind of the architecture of Beamable on AWS, just a couple of call outs I wanted to make about ECS and the use of Fargate, and the use of CloudWatch. And I guess, to circle back to the term undifferentiated, like heavy lifting, I just kind of want to just say that at AWS, right, like we're trying to make it easier for developers of all kinds to focus more on your application building instead of managing infrastructure and things like that. And so the first thing I want to get into is ECS, which is our Elastic Container Service. And that is, I think, probably one of the most important things that Beamable uses. And so why ECS? Why ECS? I'll kind of just go into this. Like, it offers kind of a complete containers like workflow. So from kind of building your applications or configuring it to deploying it, right? Like defining or deploying the service and task to orchestration. So figuring out how much compute, network storage, and all that stuff goes into your ECS clusters to finally observing, right? Kind of monitoring your logs and events for health, security, and cost reasons. I think that's a reason why ECS is probably really good for Beamable to use. And again, we talk about undifferentiated heavy lifting. I just want to say that it's kind of fully managed, so there's really no control plane for any of the users to kind of manage to upgrade or patch or to secure, right? AWS kind of does that for Beamable, so that Beamable can really focus on building out different features to help game developers, Unity developers, to accelerate their game development. And so another thing I think that is also really important to kind of know is why use Fargate. So Fargate is the service that runs the containers, and again, there's no infrastructure management there. So when we're talking about provisioning, scaling, or configuring clusters or container virtual machines that power some of the features that Beamable has, we kind of rely on Fargate for that. And finally, I just kind of want to talk about CloudWatch. And so what is CloudWatch? It's essentially just a monitoring and observability service where you can get real-time granular data on your applications that's being run on your workload. And so I know that we kind of talked about this before, Chris, but I'm just going to kind of punt it back to you and see kind of why CloudWatch is really important and what Beamable has kind of done with it.
Yeah, sure. So let's say you're a developer, you're writing your microservice code, it's going to do something great, but maybe there's a bug or something, or maybe you're getting too much volume in your deployed environment. You can write log statements in your code, and then you can go check out those log statements. I've got two examples. This one is about logs. So your service, when it's running, is running in Fargate, like Eugene said, and it's reporting its logs to CloudWatch, so you can then go to CloudWatch and read those. And actually, as a Beamable customer, you can just go to the Beamable portal or the Beamable developer website and just take a look at the logs, and they're actually streamed directly from CloudWatch, so you can see them. Yeah, I mean, nearly real time as they show up, in that page, and you can then do some console debugging, which we all know and love as developers. And then to take it a little bit more, yeah, CloudWatch does other stuff too, and so we also we have a pretty tight integration with the CPU and the memory footprint utilization of your services. And we've actually got those hooked up so that you can see them on a time series graph, and you can take a look at those. And then if your CPU utilization gets too high across all of your deployed services, which suggests that you have a high volume of players hitting your service, we'll actually use that information internally to spin up another instance of your service, so that we scale to meet that increased player demand. And so that's all driven from CloudWatch. And so that kind of data is invaluable, and we expose that to you, but we also kind of act on it behind the scenes to do the best practice.
Chris, how should a game developer get started with AWS and Beamable?
That, Josh, is a great question. I think, we'll go into it. We have a demo that we'll see in a second, but at the real high level is you go to our website, you sign up, you download the installer, and you open up Unity, and you add that installer to your project, and you make an account. And right then and there, you're sitting inside of Unity, and you're going to be using Beamable, and Beamable's built on AWS, so you're already connected. So yeah, we're going to show a demo where we do that. I guess the beats of the demo, just to kind of prepare everyone for what they're going to see. We're going to go through this example where we want to build a loot box system. and we're going to do it pretty fast, so it's not going to be like super pretty on screen, but I think you'll be able to see how functional it is and how quickly we get to this functioning environment. So we're going to build this loot box where you can claim something every so often. So we're going to show how you set up a microservice inside of Beamable and deploy that, and we're going to show how that can mutate player state, how we can connect that to the Unity code. We're going to show it running locally, and we're going to show it running remotely. And we're going to, at the end, kind of tap into some of the live ops operations you can do on that, like view the logs, view auto-generated documentation, and at the very end, we'll even go into the AWS console so that we can actually see, like, here are the resources running in AWS.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the presentation now. Before we get started with the presentation, we just want to let everyone know that Beamable's tools are best suited for game devs who are already familiar with Unity. Take it away, Chris.
Hello, everyone. In this demonstration, I'm going to show how we can use Beamable C# microservices built on AWS in order to implement a simple loot box sort of thing. So we'll have this 60-second timer. It'll go down to 0. And when it gets there, the user will be able to click claim and they'll get some stuff. But then they won't be able to claim it again until the timer goes down. And if the timer goes all the way down to 0, then like the user will have to come and actually claim the box before we start the timer again. So in order to do this, like we could do it locally, just all client side, but one, that's going to mean that people can find where we're storing that time value and change it and abuse the system. And two, this also means by doing it on the server, we have the opportunity to configure it later. So this is going to be a pretty good use case for Beamable microservices. So let's get to it. So first off, we need to create a microservice. So from the Beamable toolbox, we go to the microservices page, and I'm going to create a new microservice, and I'll call this Lootbox service and create. Okay, and here we get our UI for our microservice. And so when it built that, we can go into Unity now and go to our Beamable folder, open up microservices. Here's our Lootbox service. And we get right away a C# file that I'm going to open up, and let's just start editing our code. The Beamable microservice lives inside of a class, right? So we've got Lootbox service. This represents the microservice itself. So an instance of this class effectively is going to be running on AWS that we can call. And the methods that we can call on it are marked by this client callable C# attribute. So the first thing that we're going to implement, let's say we want to get the amount of time left that a player has to wait before they can claim their loot box. So let's change our name to get time left, and let's say this returns a number of seconds. Maybe we'll do that as an integer. And we're going to introduce somewhat of an unrelated Beamable concept called stats, where we can store key value data per player. So maybe let's store a stat that is the last time that the player claimed the reward. And then we can do a little bit of math around like UTC now and stuff to figure out how many seconds they have left, or maybe it's going to be 0 if it's ready to claim. So I'm going to go ahead and implement that code. Okay, so now we have a method that's going to return the time left, and it's based on this stat here called last claim time. So actually, let's pull this out into a constant. So we're going to access it again. All right, and now we want a method that actually lets people like claim the thing. So let's say, great, we're going to have another, let's just have an empty promise for now until we know a type. We'll call it claim. And this is also going to be client callable because we're going to want to access it from our client. All right, now we have a claim method and a time left method. And this is actually pretty much all the behavior we need so that people can first call this method and update their text that we're going to have. And then when that text gets down to 0, they can push the button, push claim, and it's going to give them their stuff and then reset some internal state. All right, back in Unity then. So I'm going to create a script. I'll call this, I don't know, Lootbox controller. All right, so this is going to be some Unity code, like code that runs on the Unity client that's actually going to communicate with our Lootbox microservice and update the UI accordingly. Okay, so now we're at this place where we've got this UI code that actually talks to the Lootbox service client. And if we take an implementation deep dive here and take a look at what this does, like we can just look at this. See, it's auto-generated code, so it's a little gross to look at, but what we do here is we actually just send a request out to the Lootbox service and to the method called getTimeLeft. And if we had any parameters, we'd actually serialize those and send them along. And then we deserialize the actual data type that we want to get back. So I think it's time to hook this up in Unity and give it a test. So my logic game elements, switch over to my inspector and add in my Lootbox controller and dig into the canvas and drag the time left down here and the button over there. And now the important thing is my microservice isn't actually running. We can see that it says local stopped and remote disabled, like it's not running anywhere. And just to kind of prove that to you, actually, if I switch over to a console and do a Docker PS command, you'll see that I don't have any Docker images running. So C# microservices and Beamable, like what they are, we're actually talking about building Docker images and then running local containers for local development. So I'm going to go ahead and push play. And this is the first time I've done it. So it's going to pull down a base image that Beamable has provided for us. So maybe we'll skip ahead through that. Nope, that went pretty fast. And once it does that, it's going to go off and actually build the source code. And now it's going to boot up and actually run the user code. So now this is running. So if I switch back to my terminal and just repeat that Docker PS command, see, I actually do have a local image running. It's called my Lootbox service container. And so from here, we're actually good to go. And so I will just run the game and we'll see what happens. And so now our time is ticking down. So actually something that we can always do in Beamable, let me drag in an admin flow right now, just so I can then open up here, and I'm going to type in DBID. So in the console, this is my Beamable player ID. I'm going to get this just so I can kind of go in and scope out some data on this user. So let's see, we're still counting down. So while we wait for that, I'm going to open the LiveOps portal. And here I can search for that player ID, and I can pull up that user account. And if I just skip down to the stats section and look for, and search for claim, yep, I can see this is the last claim time, and now we've actually got a stat committed. So let's switch back over here, and it looks like we are ready to claim our reward. So let's just make sure that if I don't claim it and I start and stop the game, that we're still going to see that we're ready to claim at the 0 second mark. Yep, we are. And you know what I also should have done is add some semblance of currency in here. So let me add in a currency HUD. So this is going to show how many gems we have on this player. So it should start with, I don't know, probably 0. Yep, so we have 0 gems, going to claim. And yeah, it looks like we have one more bug around our timing, but we went up by 50 gems and our loot box has started again. And so now if I switch back over to the stat value, you can see that it was like 2021-36. Let me just refresh the page and search for that again. Yep, and so now we have a different time where it used to end in 36. It was 2021-36, now it's 2023-12. So this is working. And so yeah, those are microservices, then those are running. So right now this is all local, and I can push claim and nothing happens right now. So a couple other things to just kind of dive into here. This is local, that's great, but we want to publish this. We don't want it to be running on our machine. We want it to be running on AWS. So go to the publish button, and we can see that we've got one service. We're going to give it kind of just the minimum resource account, and I'll drop a general comment for AWS demo, and I'll click publish. And so now behind the scenes, what's happening again is that we have to take that user source code and build it into a Docker image. And then we take that Docker image and we upload it to ECR, Beamable's ECR. Then we actually have to post some information to Beamable that says we want to turn on these services in production effectively. And so I think the step that we're on right now is the last part of the image upload. All right, so it finished, and there's some information in the log that it did. So now what we can do is actually go back to our portal, and instead of searching in the players section, we go to the microservices section, and we can actually see that we have a deployment turning on. So this is actually reaching out to Amazon Fargate and checking like, hey, we've registered a service and a task definition. Like, are there any tasks, like task instances? We know that there should be, so we're going to say we're in the status of deploying. But obviously, it takes a little bit of time to spin up those resources on AWS. And then in this lower section, we can see that this is the deployment that we made. So actually from here, we can even make new deployments. So if we needed to disable our service for some reason, we could turn it off just from the LiveOps portal. I don't want to do that, so I'll cancel out. And yeah, let's refresh the page and see if this is ready yet. Yeah, cool. So now we're running. So what I can do now, just to refresh your memory, I'm still running a local container, but let me turn that off. So I'll stop my local service. So now it's not running. So if I repeat this command, and we're getting a little bit cluttered in here, but in this last section, we're not running any containers anymore. But still, if I run this, well, yeah, we're ready to claim. We probably need some better text here, but I'll go ahead and claim. We got our bug, and now we're counting down again. And you can see I got my gems. So we actually went off and made that network request. So we sent a request here. And let's take a look at that just even in the portal. So from here, actually, there are a couple of things that we can see. So there's a logs page that we can go to. And this is going to show us just the service logs from the running image. And by default, we're only going to see info logs. So we get this one that says like, hey, we turned on. But if we enable debug, then we're going to see a much more verbose listing of all of the messages that have gone through. So yeah, we handle the message to claim, and we can actually click on that, and we can view some of the information around. And this also allows people to log stuff as they're used to and then explore it from in here. So we get access to the logs, and these are actually just being forwarded from AWS CloudWatch logs. We can also go back and take a look at the metrics tab, and this is going to show us the CPU and memory utilization of our service. Sometimes these take a moment to kind of initialize, so maybe we'll come back to that later. And then the last thing that you can do from here, which is really powerful from a LiveOps perspective, is you can go to the docs page, and this will actually look at your APIs and give you an open Swagger definition for your endpoints. So we can actually get the time left, and we can even execute this from here. So I've got 60 seconds left now, but if I run this again, now I'm counting down. So as we execute this, and if I try to claim, obviously we can't yet because the time's there, so we get back false. So this can also be really helpful to debug stuff, and you can even access this from the locally running one before. So back in Unity, you can always access local stuff here, and you can even just get hot links to those remote sections. So if I wanted to jump straight to the docs, I can click View Documentation, and it's going to bring me right to this page. All right, and for a little bit behind the scenes, our customers never see this, but this might be pretty interesting to take a look at as part of this demo. So here's the AWS console we all know and love, and if we actually head over to ECS, we can take a look and find our running services. So we maintain a private cluster for each customer. So this prod just denotes that this is a production level customer, not like an internal dev customer. And then this next number is their customer ID. So let me go find my customer ID by going and pulling that out of the resources file. So my customer ID is this. So let me come back to Amazon and just search for that. Great. So here's my virtual private cluster. If I take a look at this guy, I can see that I got one service for my loot box service. And if I even dig further into that, we will see that we have a Fargate Spot set up here with sort of a weight balance of like, if this service ever needs to scale up, we're going to prefer Fargate Spot, but we'll always have one dedicated instance just in case there's not a lot of traffic to it. So we can take a look and see that we do, in fact, have one running task. And then perhaps the last thing to point out here is that we do also set up auto-scaling rules here. So we do that based on CPU utilization. So we'll scale up based on that. So yeah, that's a little bit behind the scenes on like, this is where these services are actually placed and that they are running on AWS, although all of this is abstracted away for our customers so they can stay entirely within the Beamable portal. Cool. So that's an overview of how to create a microservice, write some code that does some interesting things, modify some player state, then access that code from Unity using auto-generated clients, hook it up to some loose game behavior here, and then do a little bit of inspection with the LiveOps portal and take a look at the microservices.
Chris, thank you so much for that presentation. Trapper, for AWS customers currently leveraging GameSparks and considering a migration prior to platform changes, how can Beamable help?
Yeah, so I mean, in addition to sort of bringing these capabilities out, just more generally, I mean, what you saw with Cloud Code is, or what you saw with microservices is really sort of Beamable's form of Cloud Code, like deeply integrated into C# and the Unity developer workflow. And so as part of that, we've also been working with Amazon to become a migration partner for GameSparks. So GameSparks is being sunset this year. And so we're working with a number of game developers to sort of migrate not just their functionality, but also data over to Beamable systems. And so to that end, we've worked with Amazon to create a number of documents that sort of compare each Beamable feature to each GameSparks feature, in addition to Cloud Code, and sort of how that migration path can be made. So in addition to sort of using these with new projects, we're also sort of listening to folks that are migrating off of GameSparks, and we're actively sort of optimizing what we're doing both with C# microservices as well as the rest of our platform. And in fact, we have a whole new feature that's going to be launching soon this month, which is microstorage, which is going to be the ability to add persistent native Mongo databases and microstorage to Beamable as well. So that will also support data stores.
And I guess, Trapper, just to kind of iterate, like how would more of AWS's customers learn about some of the new things that Beamable is coming out with?
Yeah, I mean, so the best way to learn about sort of what Beamable is doing is to hit up our website at beamable.com. Beamable is available for free to develop, so you can sign up for Beamable. You can download the Unity SDK package, get access to the LiveOps portal, the documentation, and use Beamable up to 500 MAU for free. And then after that, it's kind of simple usage-based pricing, pay for what you use on a per API call basis. But definitely follow along on our website and our Discord channel, where we make constant updates on the new features that are coming. We also have a public roadmap available at beamable.com/roadmap that you can follow along as well, which will give you an idea of some of the things that are near term and coming down the line.
We do want to open up the chat for any questions you guys might have, and we do have one right off the bat here, and it says, how many game development companies are currently making use of Beamable?
Yeah, so we have a number of larger partnerships with game studios. We do a lot of work with Eastside Games that are running idle games on Beamable, relationships with Tilting Point. We continue to operate Star Trek Timelines on top of Beamable. As far as total number of game studios working with Beamable, we have over 100 game developers who are actively building products on the platform. I think it's 124 as of today that are actively sort of engaged with Beamable projects. We have a half dozen of games that are fully out the door. We have 24 games that are going to be launching over the next quarter. So a lot of people starting to get rolling with Beamable. Like we mentioned earlier, as a game studio and this platform technology, I mean, we've been in development on this technology since 2012. So it's been, almost 10 years in the making to get to this point where we have something that's fully bulletproof, generalizable, and usable for game developers. And so, this is going to be an exciting year for Beamable, as all the work that we did last year, sort of talking to game devs, learning what they needed, tailoring our documentation, tailoring our sample projects, and tailoring our roadmap. Is really going to allow us to deliver a lot of really cool platform functionality for folks this year. Things like C# microservices that you just saw today. I mean, we just really rolled that out last summer, and C# storage is going live in January. We have a big 1.0 LiveOps portal revamp launch that's coming in January. So a lot of cool stuff. Definitely sign up and get in the mix, and we'll keep you posted about everything that's going on.
Another question from the chat says, what's the major role of Beamable for an indie game studio?
Yeah, Chris, do you want to, as an indie dev yourself, what's the role of Beamable for an indie dev studio?
Yeah, so I like making games on the side. So that question hits my heart a little bit. I think the role is really, I would describe it, if you sign up with Beamable as an indie developer, Beamable's going to help you. So I would say the role of Beamable is a friend. Making games is really hard, and it takes a lot of technical know-how, mental know-how, just to like power through the struggles that you're going to find. So Beamable is going to help not only like I was saying earlier, you have stuff that you can pull off the shelf and just start using. But I think we do a pretty good job of having our Discord community asking questions and getting answers. Honestly, it's not always about Beamable questions either. We'll chat about game dev in general too, to help people through a spot. And then just to kind of touch a little bit more on the stuff you pull off the shelf. The microservices is one part of it too, but Beamable is a pretty big product. I'll just mention that we also try to offer like UIs and prefabs that you can just drag into your game to help you not have to focus on that part of your game for a little while. Like, let's take leaderboards as an example. We have an off-the-shelf leaderboard solution, and if you want to add that to your game, it'll take you maybe 15 minutes to set that up when you follow our documentation. And you have a little sample UI that is going to sit there, and maybe that's not the UI that you're going to ship your game with, but it lets you focus on what makes your game really cool. And then when you want to spend the time to kind of redesign that UI, like, you can do it, but at your pace. Like, you can prove that the leaderboard is still a valuable add and makes your game more fun. And so Beamable is there to just provide that kind of support.
Yeah, I would add to that too. I mean, the ethos that we kind of built Beamable around is this idea of fighting for the game maker. To Chris's point, making games is really hard. You have to have huge amounts of technical knowledge, but also tons of artistic knowledge and subjective taste making and finding the fun and doing something unique and differentiated and then marketing that. And I mean, it's one of the hardest things you can do in software is build games. And so we've really tried to focus the company around celebrating game making, celebrating the game maker, and really fighting for the game maker and trying to make it as easy as possible.
The next question here is about scalability. It says, how does the platform scale with games that may have a 100,000 or a million plus MAU? Can you discuss scalability for larger games?
Yeah, the Beamable platform, delivered games, global games that ran on popular IP, right? So Star Trek, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, multiple TV and movie properties. And so we've supported games at this point up to 1 million DAU. So 100K MAU, 1 million MAU is not a problem at all. I mean, to the earlier points, Beamable takes full advantage of auto scaling. I mean, our own infrastructure is built as a series of microservices, each one with its own scaling rules around how it adapts to load and performs. And so that happens, on a service by service basis and on a customer by customer basis. So definitely something that we've seen and something that we engineer around, and things that we've even most recently load tested services against.
Next question here says, if we've integrated Beamable into our game, would Beamable help out reviewing the code to make sure everything is correctly settled before the launch?
Yeah, we've done this. So we're definitely open to reviewing things. We also have some pro support plans that you can take advantage of that give you private chat directly with the engineering team and weekly developer syncs to make sure that things stay on track, as well as roadmap consideration for tweaks and features that might make development on Beamable easier. But even without that, if you are active in our Discord and you want someone to look at some code, you can just reach out to us and we can definitely get that scheduled. I mean, we definitely will do that and help you understand if you're taking advantage of Beamable correctly. Also, post-launch, I mean, we do a lot of monitoring, and if we see opportunities for you to be more efficient with the game infrastructure, and we'll also make note of that, and we contact our customers regularly about that as well to ensure that everybody's taking full advantage of the paradigms that make the most sense under Beamable. So definitely would be open to that.
Next question here says, how easy is it to set up things like daily rewards, monthly quests, etc. in Beamable?
Yeah, so I'd say using the C# microservice feature, it's pretty easy. I think that there are always going to be like custom requirements for that kind of stuff, and different studios will want it to work, ever so slightly different. But I would say the overarching thing we did in the demo of setting up a really easy clickable loot box, that's pretty similar to a daily reward setup and a monthly quest. So I would wager you could review this seminar at some point and get that set up in half an hour, maybe a little bit longer, but we're talking maximum days instead of upwards of weeks or months.
That seems to be it for questions. Is there anything else we'd like to leave with the group here before we wrap this up?
Yeah, again, if anybody has further questions, they can definitely reach out on our Discord channel. You can also email us directly through the contact form on our website, through the chat on our website. We're all monitoring that stuff, and we try and get back to people as fast as possible. And definitely excited to hear about your game projects and ways that you think Beamable might be able to help, and also just really interested if there are blind spots that we have and features that we're not being successful with, and we love to get that feedback as well.
One more question just came in. It says, where can I find the demo with the loot boxes to get a better look at the microservices?
Let's see. So I think maybe what we can do, if we can post a link or something, we can host it on our GitHub. So you can go to, it's not public right now, but I will make it public shortly after this. You can go to GitHub and go to the Beamable organization and take a look at some of our public repositories. And those include sample projects for all sorts of things, including microservices. And so, yeah, I'll make a point to just make sure that the one used in this presentation is publicly accessible soon, so you can go take a look.
Yeah, we'll get it up at beamable.com/samples. There's a list of sample projects there, and we'll just, when we get everything pulled together, we'll get it up there and put it on the samples page.
Yeah, let me just drop a link even just here to the GitHub too.
Yeah. Awesome.
Perfect.
And I think just from AWS side, if you are an AWS customer that's been building their games on GameSparks, please reach out to probably your account manager, or you can contact Beamable directly to learn about the transition. So.
All right. Well, Eugene, Kevin, Chris, Trapper, thank you for taking the time to put this on and share a little bit about what Beamable and AWS are doing. And if anybody's interested in jumping into the Discord, it's beamable.com/Discord. And with that, that's gonna do it for this one. Goodbye, everybody.
Cool. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Beamable Game Dev Podcast. If you'd like to jump into our Discord and chat with other game devs, head on over to beamable.com/Discord. And if you'd like to try Beamable for free, head on over to beamable.com.